Someone says something to you. Maybe it's a co-worker who dismisses your idea in a meeting. Maybe it's a comment under a photo you posted. Maybe it's a friend who forgot to invite you somewhere. Maybe it's nothing more than a look. Just a look from someone who barely knows your name. And somehow that ruins your entire day. You replay it, you rewrite it, you rehearse what you should have said. You wonder what they meant. You wonder what they think of you. You wonder if they're right. And the crazy part, the thing that started all of this, it was nothing. It lasted maybe 5 seconds. The person who did it probably forgot about it before they even left the room. But you're still there. Hours later, maybe days later, carrying it. Here's the question I want you to sit with before we go any further. What if the problem isn't what they said, but the fact that it got in at all? This video is not about how to feel better with a list of affirmations. It's not about telling yourself you're amazing until you believe it. And it's not about cutting people off or building walls. What we're going to talk about today is something much more powerful and much harder. We're going to talk about building a mind that other people's opinions simply cannot penetrate. Not because you become cold, not because you stop caring about people, but because you've found something inside yourself that is more real, more stable, and more lasting than anything anyone could ever say about you. The Stoics called this the fortress of the mind, and once you understand how to build it, genuinely build it, not just talk about it, your entire relationship with the world changes. I've broken this down into 8 ideas that build on each other. You can take one and sit with it for a week, or you can let the whole thing land at once and just notice what shifts. Either way, stay with me to the end, because the last one is the one most people miss, and it might be the most important. If this kind of content speaks to you, practical philosophy, not inspiration porn, subscribe to the channel. We go deep here. Let's get into it. What you control and how to stop suffering over what you don't. There's a question the Stoics asked that sounds simple but will completely rewire the way you see your life if you actually apply it. Is this up to me? That's it. 4 words. But most people have never seriously asked it. Here's the thing. We spend enormous amounts of energy on things that are not up to us. What someone thinks of us. Whether our post gets likes. Whether someone returns our call. Whether our boss recognizes our work, whether our family approves of our choices, none of that is up to you. And yet, we treat it like it is. We try harder, we explain ourselves more, we edit ourselves, we shrink ourselves, we perform, we audition for our own lives. And what does all of that get us? Exhaustion, resentment, and a quiet, gnawing feeling that something is off, because something is off. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who was, by the way, once a slave, said that human misery comes almost entirely from one source: confusing what is in our power with what is not. What is in your power? Your thoughts, your values, your choices, your effort, your character. What is not in your power? Everything else. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That sounds like giving up. Like if you stop caring about results, you become passive. You stop trying. But that's not what this is. Think about a skilled archer. The archer trains for years. They stand in the right position, control their breathing, aim precisely. They do everything in their power. And then they release the arrow. After that, the wind does what the wind does. The target is where it is. The archer does not collapse in despair if the arrow misses. They don't spiral into self-doubt. They observe, they adjust, and they shoot again. The work is in the preparation and the release, not in controlling where the wind blows. When you truly, accept that you cannot control what others think of you, something extraordinary happens. You stop performing for an audience that doesn't determine your worth anyway. You get your energy back, and you start directing that energy somewhere it can actually make a difference, into yourself. This is the first foundation. Remember it. Is this up to me? Run everything through that filter, and your life starts to simplify. Why your self-worth cannot depend on applause. I want you to picture two things. First, an oak tree, hundreds of years old, roots that go 40 feet into the earth. When the storm comes, the branches move, they sway, they crack, sometimes a limb falls. But the tree doesn't move. It doesn't go anywhere. Because what's below the surface is deeper than what's above it. Now picture a reed, tall and elegant in still water, but it has no roots. When the storm comes, the reed bends completely, and if the water level changes, if the conditions shift, it has nothing to hold it up. Here's the honest question. Which one describes your sense of self-worth right now? Most of us are the reed, and the cruel thing is, we don't even realize it, because when the conditions are good, when people are applauding, when things are going well, the reed looks fine. It looks like it's thriving. But the first real criticism, the first failure, the first rejection, and we're completely bent, completely shaken. The Stoics were obsessed with this idea. Virtue is its own reward. Your worth is not something that exists outside of you, waiting to be granted by others. It's not in the followers, it's not in the approval, it's not in the promotion, it's in how you live. It's in whether you act with honesty, with courage, with integrity, especially when no one is watching. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, the most powerful man alive at the time, wrote in his private journal, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose your self-respect." Think about that. This man had every reason to value power and status. Entire armies answered to him, but in his private journal, the thing he kept coming back to was character. Not reputation, character. Because he understood that reputation is what other people think of you. Character is what you actually are, and only one of those is up to you. The oak grows its roots silently, underground, in the dark, where no one sees. That's where stability comes from, not from the height of the branches, from the depth of the roots. Start growing your roots, not for an audience, for yourself, how to make yourself immune to insults without becoming cold. Let me tell you about a man named Cato. Cato was a Roman senator, known throughout the empire as a man of extraordinary moral seriousness. He was also known for making powerful enemies. One day, in the middle of a public speech, a political opponent walked up to him and, in front of everyone, slapped him in the face. The crowd went silent, and Cato finished his speech, not because he was a pushover, not because he didn't feel the sting, but because he refused to give that man the satisfaction of knowing his words or his hand had reached something worth disturbing. Now, most of us haven't been slapped in public, but we've all had the equivalent. Someone mocks something you care about. Someone undermines you in front of others. Someone says something that lands right in the middle of an old wound. And we feel the heat rise. The jaw tightens. The mind starts running. Here's what the Stoics understood about insults that almost nobody talks about. An insult only has power if you believe it's true, or if you're afraid it might be. Read that again. If someone calls you a terrible pianist and you've never played piano in your life, you'd probably laugh. It would roll right off. Why? Because there's no hook in you for it to catch on. But if someone calls you lazy and part of you secretly wonders if they're right, that lands, that stings. Because it's not really about them. It's about the unresolved conversation you're already having with yourself. This is crucial, because it means the work of becoming indifferent to insults isn't really about other people. It's about knowing yourself clearly enough that their words have no home in you. The Stoics practiced this. They would regularly ask themselves, what is actually true here? Is there something worth examining in this criticism? And if not, then why am I giving it real estate in my mind? There's a difference between thick-skinned and dead. You're not trying to feel nothing. You're trying to feel accurately, to let truth in and let noise pass through. That's not coldness. That's discernment. Daily self-reflection as the only real feedback. that matters. The philosopher Seneca had a habit. Every evening before he slept, he would review his day. Not in the way we scroll through our phones, half present. He would sit with it. He would ask, where did I fall short? Where did I act well? What could I have handled differently? He wrote, when the light is out and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by. That's a level of honesty with yourself that most people are actively avoiding. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us are much more concerned with how we appear to others than with who we actually are. We spend enormous energy managing our image, our social media, our stories, the way we enter a room, and almost no energy actually examining our choices. And then we wonder why we feel hollow, why the approval, when it comes, doesn't fill the gap. The gap is always the same. It's the distance between who you're presenting and who you actually are. Self-reflection doesn't close that gap by making you more perfect. It closes it by making you more honest. And honesty, real honesty with yourself, is the beginning of everything. Try this. Not as a productivity tool, not as a journal prompt, just as a practice. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself 3 things. 1, did I act in alignment with my values today, even once? 2, was there a moment where I chose comfort over honesty? 3, is there something I keep avoiding that I already know I need to face? You don't have to fix anything tonight, just look. The act of looking, without judgment, without drama, is itself a kind of practice. It tells your mind, I am not afraid of myself. And that is more courage than most people ever develop. How adversity builds. What comfort never could iron doesn't become steel in gentle conditions. It becomes steel in fire, in pressure, in temperatures that would destroy anything weaker. The same is true of a person. I know that's not always what we want to hear. When we're in the middle of something hard, a loss, a failure, a relationship that's falling apart, a plan that didn't work, we don't want someone to tell us it's building character. We want out. We want relief. We want it to be over. And that's completely human. But here's what the Stoics observed, and what anyone who has been through something genuinely difficult will confirm if they're honest. You did not become who you are in the easy moments. Think about the times in your life when you grew the most, when you came out of something different than you went in. I will bet almost anything that those times were not comfortable. They were the losses, the betrayals, the failures, the periods when you had to keep going without knowing if it would work out. The comfort didn't make you. The fire did. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Meaning, the obstacle isn't separate from the path, it is the path. This doesn't mean you seek out suffering. It doesn't mean you pretend things aren't hard. It means that when something hard shows up, and it will, you don't collapse around the question of why is this happening to me. You get quiet, you get clear, and you ask, what is this asking of me? Because every difficulty is asking something of you. Patience, creativity, courage, humility, something. And when you find what it's asking and you give it, you come out of the fire with something you couldn't have built any other way. That's not comfort. That's something better than comfort. That's capability. Why pure intentions attract what performance never will. There's a strange paradox at the heart of human desire. We want to be liked. We want to be respected. We want to be chosen. And so we perform. We manage our image. We say the right things at the right times. We present the version of ourselves we think others want to see. And it works, for a while. We get some of the approval we were looking for, but it never quite satisfies. Because somewhere underneath, we know we're not really being seen. We're being seen by people who don't actually know us. We've attracted an audience to a character, not to a person. The Stoics would say the problem here isn't wanting connection. Connection is good. It's human. The problem is using performance to get it, because performance, by definition, is not you. Marcus Aurelius had a phrase he returned to again and again: act for the common good, not for recognition, not for reward, for the thing itself. When your actions come from a pure place, from genuine care, from honest intention, from the desire to actually contribute something, people feel that, not always immediately, not with applause, but in the way trust is slowly built, in the way real relationships deepen, in the way your presence starts to mean something to the people around you. Authenticity doesn't just feel better, it actually works better. Because performance is exhausting. You have to maintain it. You have to remember what you said. You have to adjust constantly based on who's watching. But when you're just being honest, when you're just living in alignment with what you actually believe, there's nothing to maintain. There's just the work. And the work speaks. Here's the shift. Stop trying to attract admiration. Start trying to be worth admiring. The first is about image. The second is about character. And character, unlike image, actually compounds over time. Finding your voice in the quiet. We live in a world that is terrified of silence. Every moment has a soundtrack. Every commute has a podcast. Every meal has a screen. Every quiet moment is immediately filled with a notification, a scroll, a check. We have built an entire civilization around the avoidance of being alone with our own thoughts. And I want to ask, gently, without judgment, what are we afraid we'll hear? The Stoics practiced silence deliberately, not as a spiritual performance, as a tool, because they understood something that neuroscience is now confirming. The mind needs unstructured time to process, to integrate, to actually think, not just react. When you are constantly stimulated, you are constantly reactive. You are processing input. You are never originating. You are an antenna, not a source. Silence changes that. Even 5 minutes. Sitting without your phone, without music, without a task, just existing in your own presence, noticing what comes up, noticing what you've been avoiding noticing. This is where your real voice lives, not the one that performs for others, but the one that knows what you actually think, what you actually want, what actually matters to you beneath the noise of everyone else's expectations. And here's what I've found, and what I think many of you will find if you try this. The silence isn't empty. Once you stop filling it with distraction, it's full. It's full of clarity you couldn't access before. Ideas, honesty, rest. The Stoics called this prosos, attention to self, not self-obsession, self-awareness, the quiet discipline of actually knowing what's going on inside you. You cannot build an unshakable mind without it, because how can you know what you stand for if you've never been still enough to hear yourself? Start small, 5 minutes a day, no agenda, just you and the quiet and whatever comes. Part 8, The Widening Circle, 26-30-30 sounds. How service expands the self. I want to end with something the Stoics believe deeply, but that often gets left out of conversations about personal philosophy because it sounds too simple, maybe too obvious. You grow by contributing, not by accumulating, not by optimizing, not by protecting, by contributing. The Stoics had a concept called oikeiosis, a word that roughly translates to belonging or affiliation. The idea was that human beings are naturally connected to something larger than themselves, family, community, humanity, and that a life well lived is one that takes that seriously. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." You are not separate from the people around you. Your well-being is entangled with theirs. And when you act as though you are, when you close off, protect, withdraw, you don't just hurt others, you make yourself smaller. But when you give, when you genuinely, without performance, without expecting return, offer your time, your attention, your effort, your honesty, something expands. Not your reputation, yourself. I've seen this. You've probably seen this too if you've paid attention. The most genuinely confident people you know, not the loudest, not the most aggressive, but the most stable, are almost always people who are deeply engaged in something beyond their own needs. A cause, a community, a craft they share freely, a way of being that contributes. Because here's the truth, self-worth that's built entirely around the self becomes fragile. It has to be constantly defended. It can't afford to fail. It can't afford to lose. But worth that comes from knowing you have genuinely added something to the world. That's not fragile. That can survive failure. That can survive criticism. That can survive even being forgotten. Because it was never about being seen anyway. It was about the contribution itself. That's the final piece of the armor. Not the hardest, maybe the simplest. Give something genuinely, without keeping score. So here's where we've been. You have the right to close the door on the opinions that don't belong inside you. You have the ability to build roots so deep that no storm can knock you over. You can look at an insult and see it for exactly what it is, someone else's noise. You can face yourself honestly, in the quiet, and not flinch. You can walk through fire and come out with something you couldn't have gotten any other way. You can be so genuinely yourself that you stop needing the world to perform for. You can find your voice in the silence, and you can give freely and watch yourself expand. None of this is easy. The Stoics never said it was easy. They said it was worth it, and I think you already know that. I think that's why you're here. Here's my question for you, and I genuinely want to know. What is the thing that most reliably pulls you out of your peace right now? Not what you think it should be, what it actually is. The comment, the person, the fear, the habit of comparison. Drop it in the comments. You might be surprised how many people are carrying the same thing. And if this conversation is something you want more of, if you want to go deeper into this kind of practical, grounded philosophy, hit subscribe. We go into this every week. No hype, no performance, just honest thinking about how to actually live better. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.